Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. We've shown you stories on the Trans Mountain Pipeline and the protests surrounding its expansion. Today, APTN's Chris Stewart talks to the Fort McMurray Metis about their support for the pipeline and their interest in buying into it.
They believe that investing will benefit all local members by creating jobs and keeping people in the community. Here's Chris's story.
Bill Iqaluit is the CEO of the Fort McMurray Metis. He has seen the prosperity of nearby Fort McKay First Nation with their investments in the oil and gas sector. He wants some of that same prosperity for his people. Bill Iqaluit is part of a growing number of Indigenous and Métis organizations that want to buy in to the Trans Mountain Pipeline.
We really feel strongly that, to get involved in this pipeline, if we could bring together all the Indigenous groups, the First Nations and Métis, and actually get ownership in it, we would be more in control of environmental issues, of economic opportunities, and opportunities for our youth. And, we picked up 9 acres in this area that we have real ambitious plans.
This is where he wants to build his new cultural center and seniors complex. He says royalties from the pipeline could cover part of the costs and help the community.
How can this pipeline help them? Well, what it's going to do, if we get this pipeline put through, it's going to bring the investment back into this area. There's going to be more construction jobs. There's going to be operating jobs. And all the stuff that comes with it, the small business and the opportunities, like I said, for the youth.
Dana Antunes DaCosta is a third-year CPA student. She's attending a pro-pipeline rally in Fort McMurray, hoping to be one of the people who can benefit from the pipeline.
I'll be able to stay here close to my family to get a job and work. If the Trans Mountain Pipeline goes through, I'll be able to stay close to my family, my roots. I already have children that are growing up and working in the industry, so I don't want to move away from them, and they don't want to move away.
She says investing in oil will help improve the quality of life of the Fort McMurray Metis.
They'll be able to invest in capital on the reserves, so more funding for the reserves, for housing, for education, for daycares, all these things that right now a lot of places here don't have.
We still got to live and work and provide for ourselves, and we believe that the only way we can do that is being on board and working and changing things from the inside.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Fort McMurray, Alberta.
The Manitoba Métis Federation has also expressed interest in having a stake in the proposed Trans Mountain Pipeline. President David Chartrand says the Métis are already seeing benefits from another pipeline expansion, Enbridge's Line 3. We spoke with Chartrand earlier. President Chartrand, appreciate you taking some time for us here. We're still waiting to see what will end up happening with the proposed Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. Previously, the Métis Federation of Manitoba has, expressed some interest in a stake in this pipeline. Is that still the case?
Oh, for sure. I think firstly I want to commend the Prime Minister and the Government of Canada for taking the actions they have. We look at the commodity of oil. We can't just look at it in the context of what does it do for the province of Alberta. We have to look at it in a holistic benefit to all of Canada. Where's the stake here for us as Canadians? And there is definitely a financial impact that's going to happen if we don't do it right. And Trans-Canada Pipeline is already got lines underneath the ground, and they're going to be putting another line side by side by the other, just like different Enbridge is doing right now as we go across parts of Manitoba into the United States. But there's models of examples that we have done with Enbridge where we signed some very lucrative deals with Enbridge, but we have long-lasting arrangements in partnership with Enbridge. So it shows again that these arrangements can be made, and then definitely can be more strongly made, given that Canada has taken ownership of the Trans-Canada Pipeline. There are First Nations I hear that are also looking at potentially being investors. The Federation definitely is one that wants to be an investor in this process. I think it's could have long-lasting financial benefits to my my people and create economic opportunities not seen before. It's a great opportunity for all of us, I think, in this country. But there are those yet who will criticize the issue, and I commend the work they do as environmentalists and others who are trying to protect water and the lands itself. But we have to not only look in our backyard, not only in our country, we've got to look internationally. How is this whole matter having an impact on the purse strings of our country and the effects to our country? If we can't get this bitumen, this oil out, then we're going to continue to get the lowest price per United. Americans aren't going to give us more money overnight, especially with Trump being there. So let's look at it from the perspective, if we can't get this oil to market and make the best resource available, and at the same time Canada make revenue out of this to in turn give it back to us, to invest back into us, there's going to be a great loss in this country financially. Then how are we going to replace that loss? Is the environmentalists have plans how to replace that loss? Some First Nations are opposing this. Do they have plans how they're going to replenish that resource that's going to be gone? Where's the money going to continue to come to invest in Indigenous economic development, Indigenous investment in education and health? All these things come at a cost. And for sure, I'm too one that protects the environment. I support the environment strongly, but I'm also very conscious of the economic engines that are giving us an opportunity to great investments for my people. And so we have to look at both sides. I don't think it's fair to look only at one side of the coin. We have to look at both sides of this coin. So we will support TransCanada strongly, and I do commend the government for going the extra mile and going forward and buying this company in the interim to make sure it becomes a success. It will become, eventually it'll come. It's just a matter of when now.
President Chartrand, you mentioned Enbridge, and Line 3 is under construction going through Manitoba and other prairie provinces right now. What benefits are the Métis seeing from Line 3? Oh,
in fact, I think you didn't answer the right question, because in Enbridge right now, I'm getting calls from a lot of we have guaranteed 150 Métis employed. We've also trained and partnered with some of the First Nations, and they're getting employed. And I can't see enough of the calls I'm getting from people saying, yeah, I just saw my check. I just saw my check. You know how big it is? Like, it's substantially big. And I'm talking some people working for 1 week are getting checks cleared of over $3,000 a week. And so right now the pay is very good. We know it's a short term, but clearly at the end of the line, we also knew the pipeline would have to come in, because it's at the 48th year, and at 50 years they changed the pipelines for environmental protection, etc. So we know the line would have to come in no matter what. The question was, how do we get the best bang for our dollar? We also have a long-term relationship with President Monaco. We have monitoring, which will happen for the next 10 years with Enbridge, where if there's any potential, I know they have more technology, more science attached to their environment of how they put these pipes underneath the ground, but there could be a problem. There's no perfect system. So what we've negotiated with Enbridge is that we'll have a monitor on site at any type of spill, any type of call. Our monitor will be entitled to walk in there, see what's going on, and brief us immediately as the Métis government. So we're looking at, we have a 10-year agreement, we're looking at a 40-year agreement with Enbridge right now, and President Monaco wants to leave his mark also on behalf of Enbridge, that they're strongly supportive of the environmental issues that we raised as Métis leaders, and they definitely want to see the long-term relationship, because they said, we know we have to come back in 50 years again, so we want to keep a partnership with the Métis government for the next 50 years and show that we are committed to Indigenous people in this country.
President Chartrand, we'll have to hold it there, but appreciate you taking some time for us here today.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Thanks for having me on.
The national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls continues in Iqaluit. We will take you there.
But first, here's a look at Friday's weather forecasts.
Off to the east coast, we've got 12 with a mix of sun and cloud in St. John's. Lots of sun down in Nova Scotia. Inukjuak is 7 with some rain. Nain, it has rain as well, and 3 degrees. Lots of sun in southern Quebec. Chibougamau 27, 29 in Montreal. London is 26, as well as Toronto with sunshine. Peterborough is 26 but some cloud. Up in northern Ontario, we've got 28 rain in Kapuskasing, 28 in sun in Timmins. To northern Manitoba, we've got 7 degrees in sunshine in Pucktawagan, 9 in Nepal. 18 in Gimli and Winnipeg, 29 sunny in Brandon. Saskatoon's in at 9 with some rain. Regina, 15 and some rain. To northern Saskatchewan, we've got lots of sun in Uranium City and 6 degrees. And Buffalo now is 7 with some sun and cloud, 8 in La Ronge, sun and cloud. Welcome back. Today is the last day of hearings in Iqaluit for the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. Our Kent Driscoll has been there for the whole week and joins us from Iqaluit with two of the inquiry's commissioners. But first, here's some testimony from today in Iqaluit.
Being able to meet somebody exactly where they are at and saying, I'm the one that's providing the service. You're the one that needs the service. I'm coming to you because you are valid, because you need help, because you want support, and you, as you are, deserve that.
Now I'm here with Chief Commissioner Marion Buller and Commissioner Brian A. Olson. And first of all, what I'm wondering, with an inquiry like this, when we're dealing with the overarching term of Indigenous, there's always the Indigenous covers a lot of ground. It covers First Nation, Métis, and Inuit. What I'm wondering, from what you heard, what are the specific Inuit concerns about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls that you've heard from this inquiry so far today?
Sure. Well, there's certainly a lot of specific concerns about the uniqueness of the land and the territory, and some of the difficulty in accessing services such as health services, and women having to travel large distances to access health services and that sort of thing.
We've also heard some very specific concerns arising out of communication difficulties because of lack of cell service or broadband that has created, especially in outlying communities, greater vulnerability for Indigenous women and girls. Also, we're hearing about the difficulties of employment, language, requirements to be bilingual. So there are a lot of very specific issues for this part of Canada and for Inuit people that we don't hear elsewhere in Canada.
Now, considering that these hearings are being held in Iqaluit this time, do you think the approach has been Inuit-specific enough? I mean, we covered housing, but a lot of the housing stuff that was covered was historical in nature, according to QTC. The lack of shelters in Nunavut is a huge issue that may or may not apply in different parts of the country. Do you think you've been Inuit-specific enough here over the last few days?
I believe that we have been Inuit-specific all across Canada, not just here, because we've heard about Inuit issues when we've been in Winnipeg, when we've been in Montreal, when we've been in Quebec City, when we've been in Vancouver. So we're hearing about Inuit-specific issues all across Canada.
Commissioner Olson?
Yes, well, the hearing here this week was to look at colonial violence, how it affects Indigenous people. We did have a large focus on how it impacts on Inuit people, but we also looked at other aspects, including Métis impacts and that sort of thing.
Oh. And with it being here in Iqaluit, only 18 of the 50 groups withstanding decided to make the trip here. Looking back, would you have done anything different to try and increase the turnout among the groups withstanding?
Well, I think it is a bit more difficult to travel here, of course, but I think it's important that we hold hearings in all regions of the country, so I think it's valuable that we've been here.
Commissioner Buller, anything more you could have done to increase the turnout among groups withstanding?
That's something you'd have to ask the parties. I don't know what individual challenges they face with respect to getting representation here. But don't forget, we're live webcast as well, so that even though they may not be here in the room, parties withstanding certainly are able to follow every minute of the proceedings from perhaps a more comfortable location for them.
Now, and Commissioner Olson, you mentioned it a little. With the Rankin Inlet hearings, it was really clear why it was important to do it in Nunavut. You had Inuit women telling Inuit stories on Inuit land. Why was it important to have the Commission come here to Iqaluit?
Well, again, I think that it's important that we get across the country and hear from as many regions as possible, whether that be in our community hearings when we were hearing from family members and survivors, or in the Phase 2 and Phase 3 of our hearings when we're hearing from institutional witnesses and expert and knowledge keepers. So I think we want to make sure that we cover as much of the country that we can in the limited time that we have.
And Commissioner Buller, and this will be my wrap-up, what I'm wondering is, with a large inquiry like this, one of the big dangers you can fall into is, you want to call it mandate creep. Because an issue like missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls connects to so many issues, there's always the danger of wanting to make it everything for everyone. How do you keep that mandate creep and away and balance informing yourself while avoiding trying to be everything to everyone?
I think what we've been doing regularly is going back and rereading our terms of reference and reminding ourselves of what exactly it is we have to accomplish. I agree, it's very tempting to try to be everything to everyone. We don't have the time to do that. We simply don't have the time. So we have to remind ourselves of our terms of reference, the work that we must do within the limited time that we have, and stay focused.
And Koyanamik to both of you, and back to you in Winnipeg.
Thanks, Kent. Time for another quick break, but when we come back, more reaction to APTN's hit news show, First Contact.
You won't want to miss that after the break, but first, here's a story that we're working on and the rest tomorrow's weather.
Imagine hunting, fishing, and trapping were your only means of income. And throughout the years, it's taken a drastic decline.
You're not supposed to be touring around.
We speak to community members in northern Manitoba. They shared their stories on how the hydro development is affecting their livelihood. Coming soon to APTN National News.
To northern Alberta, we have lots of sunshine, 6 in high level, 7 in Fort Chip, lots of sun up there. Down south, rain and snow in Red Deer, and 5 degrees, mix of sun and cloud, and 5 in Calgary. Campbell River's 15, as well as Vancouver and Victoria with lots of cloud and a bit of rain. 16 in Sandspit, 5 up in Fort Nelson with a mix of sun and cloud. To the Yukon, we've got 11 and lots of sunshine in Dawson, 10 in Mayo, 10 in Whitehorse. To the NWT, Northern Wells is 5 and rainy, Wauhee is 4 and some rain. Tuck is in at -1, mix of sun and cloud. Sax Harbor, rain and -5. Cambridge Bay, -1 and some rain/snow. And Arviat, we've got 4 and rain. Iqaluit is in at 0 with a mix of sun and cloud, as is Arctic Bay. Penetang is 2 with a mix of sun and cloud. And Iqaluit, 3 and some rain.
Welcome back. First Contact has generated a lot of buzz online. Much of it has been positive, but the praise is far from universal. While much of the dialogue taking place online has been generally positive, some have been sharing their concerns about First Contact Canada. Author and educator Chelsea Vowell wrote on Twitter, "Here's my thing about First Contact. It's traumatizing and triggering as hell to hear the same racist arguments we are always bombarded with being given even more airtime." Author David Alexander Robertson agreed in a thread he wrote, saying, "Why is it always Indigenous people who have to bend over backwards to prove our worth? There are books out there. There are organizations that are prepared to share information." Artist RJ Jones tweeted, #FirstContact summed up, "I am cured from racism after my 28-day trip to humanize Indigenous people. I'm no longer racist, and I have a TV show I participated in to prove it."
We're thinking,
Some of those concerns were discussed on a special edition of In Focus with the producers of the show, where they admitted feeling unsure at times and a bit scared about what they were doing.
You have these moments where you sit back and reflect and go, oh my God, like, have we done something insane?
It's scary.
It's scary.
And you question yourself all along, did I do something wrong? Am I giving the voice to the wrong people? But all across the country, everyone had agreed to participate, to educate, to share their lives, give them food, share, show the love and the richness of our communities. And that's what people don't know. And when you see these three sitting here, I mean, you know, I'm so honored that they participated and shared that voice, because we don't get to do that all the time.
Tonight is the season finale of that show, First Contact, which takes 6 Canadians with ignorant or racist stereotypical views of Indigenous Canadians on a 28-day educational tour of Turtle Island. Right after the finale, I sit down with them to see what, if anything, they learned. Here's a sneak peek. Participants are in the hot seat about the ugly things they had to say about Indigenous Canadians. Did you know you had these were they stereotypes to you? Do you look and go, oh, I have all these stereotypes in my mind about Indigenous people? Or did you think that some of those things that we heard you say, they were fact-based?
I think on some level, you do know that they're stereotypes because they're not good things to say about anybody. So when you say these negative things that, generate this negative connotation to a specific person, then how can you say after that that's not a stereotype? We created it in our minds based on other things. Maybe it's based on a fact, but that doesn't mean it applies to every single person who is Indigenous in this case.
And what it's like to watch themselves on this journey. You guys, anything that you look back on and went, oh, that was an embarrassing?
I don't feel embarrassed personally. I feel embarrassed that some of the views didn't change as a whole. We all went on the same journey, and it seemed like there were missed opportunities for people to have a different perspective. And that's how I feel embarrassed as Canada as a whole, that we act like this.
One participant, even after meeting numerous residential school survivors, believes that residential schools weren't all bad.
150,000 kids went through residential school. We're 150,000 kids lassoed. There's a video where they say the kid was lassoed and dragged.
Okay, so of those kids, how many? What would make it? What's a figure that you're okay with?
There's no figure that I'm okay with. I'm not saying it was good.
So one would be too much for you. So then you do have a problem with residential schools, and you see the damage they've done to the
that aspect of residential schools. Yes.
And things get heated between the participants themselves. What did you learn from that? From this experience on this show specifically, what did you learn?
Well, actually, I learned it just before the show. I found out about what the treaty money was all about, and I did not know that until just before this trip.
But what did you take away from the show? Like the 28 days of us gone, what were you able to take away from that?
I'm not even sure what I wanted to take away from it. I was looking, because we didn't know before the show exactly where we were going or what it was related to or anything else.
Not what you wanted to take away, but on day 28, how did you feel?
Was there anything that you learned that could maybe shifted your views a little bit?
Not really, no.
That's tonight on a special presentation of In Focus right after the season finale of First Contact. If you've missed this series, you can actually binge watch all 3 episodes on APTN on Sunday afternoon or evening. Check your local listings for broadcast times. And if you want to watch it online, we'll be streaming the series on Monday at aptn.ca/firstcontact beginning at noon Central Standard Time. I'm going to sit down with the executive writer and director of First Contact, Jeff Newman. He'll explain what he hoped to accomplish with this show, and that's tomorrow here on APTN National News.
Looking forward to it. Looking forward to that reunion show tonight, too.
Me too. Well, until then, I'm Melissa Ridgen.
And I'm Dennis Ward. Have a great night.